Hey, welcome to Inside the 90. So today we're going to dig into a fairly common topic, which is leadership team development. So what we want to do is, Andrew, talk a little bit more about what does it look like to build a healthy leadership team. Mm-hmm. And, there's multiple key puzzle pieces to really getting traction, to getting vision traction and healthy. One is the VI relationship. And then the other is the leadership team, and getting a cohesive leadership team. And on one of my earlier podcasts with Alec from Vision Spark, he said, so they're a recruiting agency that recruits for EOS, so integrators, visionaries, and with organizations that run on EOS as a whole, they have an awesome hiring and recruitment process. So go listen to that one. But the stat that he gave me that surprised me was up to 80% of leadership teams have transitioned almost immediately upon rolling out EOS. So there's some turnover there for some reason. So I guess the opening question for you is, when you look at leadership teams and those that you work with, like what percentage of your clients or teams that you've interacted with really struggle with leadership team?
It's interesting. And actually, to back up Alex's kind of perspective and statistics, I was actually thinking as you're going through that, and I think every single team I've ever worked with over a 2-year period has had some change in leadership team member.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever had one team that started with the exact same people.
So 100% of your clients.
I'd have to double check that, but I am if not, there may be one, maybe two that have not. And but think about it. It makes sense as to why. There's no clarity of what a leadership team is. Correct. And who's on, we're kind of forming this idea and this entity together. So it's natural when we gain clarity and we ratchet up accountability, it's going to shuffle itself out because we probably have wrong people in the wrong seats in the start of that journey.
So when we think about the 3 phases of a leadership team, the forming, let's say the adjusting, and then the maturing. Let's start with the first phase there, forming. What does it look like for an organization who's thinking about or actively rolling out EOS, but really the leadership team this is the first time they're addressing that?
So we use the accountability chart to build the leadership team. So let's just talk about that. But every organization has a leadership team already. It's probably not defined, and it's not clear, and it's not written on an accountability chart, and people don't understand if they are on it or if they're not on it. You have your handful of people in an organization that you go to and that you get in a room when you have these big strategic decisions to be made and some of those things. So we already have one. We just need to put it together. So we use the accountability chart to understand what are the major functions of our organization. Those become our seats. Those seats a team member sits in, and at the top level of the major functions, that forms our leadership team with the addition of our integrator and our visionary. So now that becomes our leadership team, because each member of that team is leading a function for the company as a whole.
And when you think, looking at the first 3 full days, if you're with an implementer, you've got the focus day, the vision building 1 and vision building 2. And if you're self-implementing, those 3 steps are really important. Talk about, where does that conversation start and where does it start to get shaped?
Always. Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
That is it's a tool. We start at day 1. Accountability chart is the very first tool we dive into. Yep. And we start to shape, and we never stop shaping the accountability chart. It becomes the living organism for us. But just to answer your question more specifically, on day 1, we create the leadership team.
Yep.
So we are actually defining what those roles and responsibilities are of the major functions, and we are placing names in those seats in that room. So you come in and you have one job, you walk out and your role, your position may look different.
Yep.
Right? Doesn't mean we're going to make the change that day.
Correct.
But we're starting to make that shape and create that day 1, starting to put that on paper. That gives us that clarity.
Yeah.
So that's really where it starts. But it doesn't ever really stop of kind of building that foundation. And we elevate the idea of this leadership team right away on day one, because we build the leadership team accountability chart. We build the accountability chart to the level of the leadership team. Then the leader that is sitting in that function after day one builds out their team in the exact same manner. So we're already showing ownership, accountability for that person in that function as they go and build the right structure for their team.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that really starts kind of this idea of the formation. Now, there's a piece of this that when we're building and forming this leadership team that we have, the functions are clear, the roles and responsibilities are clear. If you have any direct reports, we put LMA as a role and responsibility, which is leadership management and accountability. But there's another piece of this that isn't necessarily defined on the accountability chart as like a role, but more of like a charter or like an aura that it means something to be on the leadership team.
Correct.
And it's a different, like there's a role and responsibility to sit at that table. There's a responsibility to it. There's a acting with the greater good in mind. Even though we expect everybody to do that, there's another commitment at that point.
Yeah, and I've experienced that with Team 1 and Team 2 as well, especially when you so I've hired people who are really good at leading teams within other organizations, right? And then you bring them on and they have defined their success at how successful they are at building a culture within a team.
Yes.
And that's a red flag for me, or I should say a yellow flag, right? Because bringing someone, orange flag.
It's leaning to red.
Yes. So that's a day one conversation to me for anyone on a leadership team is understanding Team 1 and Team 2, right?
I love it.
And Team 1 is here to serve each of us, right? And we have, sometimes you literally do have fiduciary responsibility, right? But we have responsibility to make sure that we are leading this organization and understand the role we have at this table. And there's some good language around, all right, what does it look like to do that? So that this could be charter type language, but what are some of those truisms that to be an effective leadership team, you've got to have?
Yeah. I don't want to lose this talk of the truisms and the charter and all of that, but I think it's important to set a tone of what you're talking about because, and here's a perfect example. And I think this is such a crucial topic and it's a big issue because we think people are doing a great job leading their departments and they probably are, but they're creating crevices between the rest of the organization when they're acting when they put Team 2 above Team 1, right? Team 1 is a leadership team because we're all dedicated to the greater good, which is what's written on the VTO. So here's how it actually shows up in real life. Last week I was in a session. And in a session, I'll ask the team, are there any right people, right seat issues that we need to be concerned about? Let's put them on the issues list and work through them. Not meaning that we're going to just call people out. We have to get really healthy doing this. And the leaders went around and said, well, I have 3 in my department. I have 2 in mine. I have 1 in mine. And I said, okay, what are the names? And it was really like they didn't want to open their cards up.
Yeah.
And we had to stop and said, okay, what type of team do we want to be?
Yeah.
Do we want to be a team that we guard our teams from everybody else?
Correct.
Or do we want to be a team that we're open and honest and we put those things on the table? And not only that, what maturity looks like there is you call out one of my people in this room for us to talk about.
Yes.
And I don't get defensive.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the difference of what I'm talking about, of really kind of opening that up and saying, look, we're all chasing this together.
Yeah.
But the truisms in general. So when I think about forming and what does that mean to kind of be part of that is act with the greater good in mind. So Doc Rivers has a quote out there that every season that he would start, he'd walk in the locker room and he'd say, look, I'm going to make decisions that you don't like. I'm going to make decisions that I don't like, but they're all made through the lens of winning the most amount of games as possible.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by create a good in mind is like, there's going to be things that I don't like that I'm making decisions now that hurts my team.
Yep.
Right. But that's what we need to do to win.
Yep.
And that's what matters.
Yep.
And so that's kind of that truism of some of those characteristics that we talk about.
And I've hit that exact thing at Wonder with Team 1 and Team 2 scenario where, as a creative founder myself, there was tension and like, well, who gets to say what? And, I would like to think no one on my team is going to question my motives. They know I'm passionate about the work and our clients and solving problems well. But the how can get really nuanced.
Yes.
And, that's that conversation of, the how can be messy because, I have decisions that I have to make. And at times I'm going to make ones that I like and you don't. At times I'm going to make decisions that I don't and you do. And sometimes the responsibility is there's a seat who LMAs that, who gets to make that call.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's that piece of it. Now let's talk about, we've built our leadership team, right? We have it. We have some things going. And now when we put the system in place, there's some accountability. Did we get our rocks done, our scorecard measurables hit, and your discipline, right? And that's naturally going to boil up. Do we have the right people in the right seats on a leadership perspective, right? Do they get it? Do they want and have capacity to sit at that table?
Yeah. And I think the want, and you taught me this, want is key. But in this instance, at the leadership, it's want the betterment of, right? The seat that I'm in, the leadership team overall, the company. So you definitely got to W the betterment of. It's not that you own this process or this team. It's that you're focused on, with the leadership team, making your team and the whole organization better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we get to that point. Now let's talk about adjustments on the leadership team. So we see an opportunity. Maybe we're growing and we're not making any changes. We're just adding, right? A function, and we're splitting one function into two, and we're adding a leadership team member. Or maybe it's consolidation of two, or maybe there is just somebody's leaving and we're bringing somebody else in. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, and I think another thing is transition. Someone's on the leadership team, and for whatever betterment of the organization, they're transitioning off too, right? So someone else may be transitioning in. But sometimes that's okay. It's like not being on leadership team is not necessarily a demotion.
No.
It's just the right thing for the organization. But I think from there's dynamics there. I think there's a fear of putting someone on the leadership team too early. But then there's also the consequence of putting someone on the leadership team too late. So I think that's one of those things that, you may or may not get it perfect. But just having clarity of why, and when the right time is to put someone on. In my personal experience, I like having someone inside the organization before we put them on the leadership team. So even if it's this is the potential person to be in that seat, I think it's important that they understand the organization and they're a part of the culture before they step into it personally.
Yeah.
And now that could also be situational as well.
All right. I just want to take a second and say thank you so much for being here. Jami and I absolutely love EOS and what it's done for our businesses and our life. So hopefully you're finding value in these conversations. If you are, go ahead and take a minute and subscribe wherever you may be listening. It does a lot for the show. It keeps us going, keeps us motivated, and allows us to keep putting out free content for all of you. And also, if you know anybody that may be beneficial to the conversation today, go ahead and share. From my perspective, I don't know if I have an opinion on that specifically.
Yeah.
But what I do have an opinion on is when it's decided and how it's decided. So one is those should be in quarterly discussions, like in the IDS and the quarterly. That's a big meaty thing. We look at the accountability chart quarterly and make sure it's right. So using the accountability chart to define what the seat is, what's the roles and responsibilities without names, right? Like,
correct,
is this a function we need at this table?
Yeah.
Is there enough here? What does that function look like? Then it's okay, yes, it is. Now we're making the decision of whatever that move is in that quarterly discussion. And then whether we want to bring them on outside and then move them in, I think it's depending on the team on how they want to do those things.
And then on that too, so gut checking myself, right? Whose decision is it when and who and how someone comes on the leadership team?
Is this a from experience?
This is from my call to you, and you're like, hey bud, back down a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. The integrator is the one that is responsible for ensuring that we have the right people in the right seats and we have the right major functions on the leadership team in order to carry out the vision.
Yeah. And I think this is so critical to eliminating the whiplash, right? Because as a visionary, it's like problem. You change things up, you mix it around because that's what you're wired to do. And I'm very much wired and thrive in change.
Yes.
And so I'm fine changing stuff all the time, right? But that's the role that the integrator plays
100%.
is to prevent that change from whiplashing the team.
Yes.
And so when we had, and we're still in the evolution of our leadership team, but that was a good reminder when we were talking that I was like, oh, I have to actually circle back with Warren. I got to frame this up and I'm going to say, hey, this is your decision to make. So I want you to give me your timeline back on how you want to work this through and when you think you're going to be there.
Exactly right.
And that was the right way to slow that down.
100%. Now, I don't want to answer that in a vacuum. The integrator still needs to be aligned with the visionary on those things. And that's what the same page meeting's for. The same page meeting should be it should be discussions on the leadership team.
Yes.
How's the leadership team doing? Do we have the right people in the right seats on the leadership team?
Yeah.
Do we have the right priorities? All of those things. That should be the heart of the same page meeting.
And on that, so our same page meeting, if you're not doing them, you really need to.
Yeah.
Ours is once a month. Warren and I leave at 1 on a Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and we spend usually 1 to 6. But my rule is we're not done till we're done.
Yeah.
So we've gotten very efficient. I think we're doing a good job of living in the L10s, living in the weekly. With the whole team. So our leadership, our same page meetings have gotten pretty good.
Yeah.
But we do get offsite and we tell everybody like, hey, we're out, we may or may not tell them where we're going.
Yeah.
But then, and the very first thing we do is just get the list. Let's pull it up at 90 and let's see all the things. Then let's start with the most important 3. And we just IDS through that.
And one thing I would add in there, I think it's a good thing to have a revolving IDS, is leadership team accountability chart. Leadership team scorecard performance.
Yep.
Leadership team rock performance. It's a little bit of an opportunity to just kind of check in on those 3 things. Like, do we have the right team? Do we have the right, is this going well?
Yeah.
All of that. And then you have your quarterly conversations. The integrator will have the quarterly conversations with each team member to kind of hone that in. But that helps kind of set that stage. So now you're in this position where you have, somebody's not upholding the leadership team, but they're good at all their roles and responsibilities, but they're playing that team 1, team 2 thing, right? So there's some of that.
Yeah.
We need to add, we need to subtract, right? And I think in those adjustments, we have to keep our core values to be the lens. So the core values will help us guide how to do that appropriately, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we need to act within the construct of our core values on how to make those adjustments. But then you also use the cadences that we have, the same page meeting to have those discussions, quarterly conversations to be open and honest with the team members about what it is. And then we use the tools to help us determine rocks, scorecards, right? Some of those other aspects, core values, to kind of allow that to live and breathe from that perspective. And then we just got to make tough decisions at times.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part too, is when it does come to the tough decision, is to lean into the tools.
Yes.
Right? Go back to core values, accountability chart, roles and responsibilities. Are they clear? Are we holding someone to an expectation that they haven't been informed with?
Yes.
Right? That's a leadership team fail if there's an expectation that someone doesn't know about, right?
100%.
You haven't actually focused on the accountability chart and the core processes and those things really well and rolled them all the way out if there's unmet expectations.
And being on the leadership team has its own roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Like you have to be really clear about that you're on the team, which means XYZ.
Yeah.
It's team one versus team and team two. It's like all these different charters, which I want to talk about in a minute, but it supports that. I also want to kill this notion that we can't put somebody on a leadership team and then take them off the leadership team.
Correct.
If we do that, if we live the cadence, we use these tools, it's not as painful as it feels to us.
Correct.
Because if we're clear, I've seen it happen more times than not where we take somebody off the leadership team, put them somewhere else in the organization, and they become happier because they didn't get one or have capacity to be at that level of they didn't want to be on that leadership team that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of we need to get over the heartburn and some of the ego hit naturally, but usually we can save that if they're GWC the other roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. And one of the challenges I've seen from a scale perspective is if someone's a large organization and that they create the accountability chart and they have all the people in the seats, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a different foundation to where if you're starting with someone who has, one person in 3 different seats of the leadership team, which it can be a victim of scale. But you have to then on the leadership team know what hat am I wearing at the time that you're in whatever role or capacity. And that's something that I've seen as a visionary where I started and had multiple hats. I have an urgency to give those hats away. Mm-hmm. But that urgency is tension that has to live there because as much as I want, I want to just give that away. There's no one there to actually LMA it.
Correct.
Right. So it's like, all right, if I'm in multiple seats, I have multiple accountabilities.
Yes.
And I have to be very clear on those.
And you got to be careful because you put your integrator in a tough spot.
Correct. Exactly.
When you're just like, I don't want to do this. I want to get rid of this, which is good for delegation.
Yeah.
But you're doing it as a visionary, not involving the integrator from the delegation and timing
Correct.
and all those aspects appropriately.
Yes. Correct.
And I think and this comes into the maturity. So I think maybe it's time to move to some of that maturity.
Yeah.
But all I want to say is on the adjustments is we got to get really comfortable with that because it's going to be a forever thing.
Yeah.
That you may have long periods of time when you have the same leadership team, but inevitably you're always going to be changing that. So get comfortable with
Correct.
it and use the tools to help and act with courage. Have those conversations and use the tools to help. And
I would say from the forming to adjusting to, really so the 5 dysfunctions of a team is a great book that talks about, how you can transition from, let's say, toxicity to trust. I mean, the foundation of trust. But I think understanding too that leadership team, we used to just call it one and done. It's like, if it's on this and we solve it, it's done. It's not to come back up when we walk out of the room, right? Yeah. There's no politicking of hey, I know we said that, but I want to do it. I wish we would have done it this way. It's that's part of the commitment to that team.
Yeah.
Is, clarity is there. We understand the roles and responsibility of everyone that's there. And although we may not like every decision, we are united as when we walk out of that room.
Yeah.
With what decisions have been made.
Yeah. Which it leads exactly into the maturing thing.
Yeah.
So the maturity of the leadership team is where their work is. That's where their hard work, that's where their work really comes in. And so there's these principles and you're bringing them up, right? One and done, team 1 versus team 2, all these different principles, which I have a little bit of a list of something I think we can hit. But all of this being said is that we need to define what it means for our team. So there's this idea of a team charter, which is separate from our core values. It's built with the values in mind. It doesn't conflict with the values, but specifically for this team, what does it look like? What is that thing? And it's much more timely of the things that we're dealing with now, and the charter can change. So, for instance, like I do this with a lot of teams at annual planning and saying, for this next year, what does this team need to hold each other accountable to, right? And that starts to become our charter. It can be something like one and done. That's a great concept. Everybody understands what it is. It could be silence equals agreement. Yeah. So as soon as we walk out of here, like we know that if I didn't say anything, I agreed to what was done in there. It could be okay cutting Jami off. That's a team charter thing. Like Jami has this thing, and you're like, team, I need you to hold me accountable to this for the betterment of our team.
Yes.
Right. It could be these like really specific, lasered in on a team member. It could be these overarching things, but ultimately, what do we need to do as a team? And that starts to give us a definition of what it means to be on the leadership team.
Yeah. So the great example, my wife and I, she has one, and she's like, stop trying to convince me. Right. The second she raises her hand, she's like, hey, I'm not on board with this. Stop trying, because she's fallen victim to me leading her off a cliff too many times. So I now know if she raises that she's like, I'm like, all right, I got to stop. I got to give her time and give her room to come back with questions when she's ready. But she's tapping out, you know.
But that's a team charter between the two of you that you know to respect it, and she knows to do it. Yeah. Right.
And it can be, these are things, because when we, I had a lot of questions for you when you talk about the team charter, because I was like, well, where do core values come into play, right? Core values are the core values for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But each team has different nuances and dynamics.
100%.
So like on the leadership team, although one of our core values is not radical responsibility, like that's a very easy thing to say as a leadership team, we're gonna take radical responsibility, right? We're gonna show up with our scorecards. We're gonna demonstrate to everybody else what really strong EOS looks like.
Yes.
Not just EOS, but how we run the business. But as that, and move down a layer, and like for us, like once we got into our, like the two hats I wear currently are visionary, and I'm actually the creative director, right? Yeah. So I'm in that L10. But one of the things there is get unstuck.
Yeah.
Right. So easy to just get stuck. And to be like, I can't come up with an idea. I don't know. I don't like the work that I'm doing. And that's one of the things for me. It's like, you got to get unstuck, whatever that means. If you got to go play basketball, go play basketball. If you got to lay on a picnic table and stare at the stars, I'm good with that.
And you can probably tie that back to a value.
Correct. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like making it happen for us is a core value.
Yep.
Yeah. Be courageous. That's a core value.
Exactly.
So it does support that. But within that team, like it's very common that for creatives, it's like you got a blank white canvas and you're trying to figure something out and you're just not there, and you can get frustrated with yourself.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is to even strengthen that is because that can become a little bit close to values. Strengthening it is, how do I hold you accountable to it as a team member?
Yes.
So it's like the accountability between team members, that what we're trying to build here is really kind of where that comes from. Like, so like when I was leading a sales team, like one of our charters was like, we celebrate failures always. So like, no matter what, if we fail, we lost a deal, whatever it is, we're celebrating that thing, because that's how, like, we got the no. That's okay.
Correct. Yeah,
right? From anybody that leads sales who knows this, but like that was part of our charter, that instead of hiding failures, instead of doing that, we wanted the team to celebrate.
Yeah.
So somebody comes up and be like, well, I think I pushed them too hard. They left. Good job, man. Yeah. Good way to push and try. And now what do we learn from it? How do we go? Right. All of those different things. Yeah. But this team charter perspective is, and also it's important to note that when we build this, any adjustment on the team, the charter needs to be looked at. So if one person leaves or one person enters, that charter can change.
Yeah.
Because the entity has changed.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, because it is an organism to itself, right? And when you think about a cohesive leadership team, you're saying when we come together, we're united. And when we split apart, we're each still serving that team in everything that we're doing. But, everybody has different stuff going on in their lives, right? You got personal, you got work, you got balance, you got all these things that create a very dynamic leadership team. And it is naturally going to have ebbs and flows.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so you just have to recognize that team, if it's feeling good and like you have this charter and then you have to make a change, you have to take a second. You can't just bulldoze through that and add somebody, here's our charter and sit in and here we go. Like you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to take a second to respect that organism has changed now. Whether that's sitting down with the person as a team, talking about the charter, why the charter exists. Is there anything that you would need from us as a team? Maybe we make a tweak to the charter with that person involvement, right? Or when somebody leaves, same thing. Like just open that up, because that starts the foundation of vulnerability-based trust. We talked about the 5 dysfunctions. That starts at this basis of trust. So then we can have healthy conflict.
Yeah.
If the team's healthy and all of a sudden you had somebody in, they're not part of that, they're not going to be able to have conflict with you, because they didn't start from this basis of trust, being part of that and being part of that.
And I even think the opening line to all L10s, and I think this is critical for the leadership team, is the segue, right? So I think there's even power in that, right? That's, as a leadership team, that we're vulnerable to each other early, right? The beginning of the meeting. Like we're talking about some, a personal and a work win, but sometimes the win is like, hey, this is a loss. Something painful's happened, So even just being vulnerable, which I think has got to be a tenet to all leadership teams, right? But I think that segue is really, really important to setting the tone for that.
It's really good, because it's like you see you can see a point of not having a healthy leadership team, or areas that you really need to focus on the people that have a hard time with the segues.
Yep.
Celebrating wins, talking about things they're struggling with, what's working, what's not working, because there's a breakdown in trust, whether it's from their perspective, but whether they don't feel like they can trust somebody in the room, or they're just not willing to be vulnerable with it, whatever that is. But that's going to slow us down a lot, right, from that perspective. And I think it even goes to, I don't know if we're recording yet, but you're talking about ideal team player. Like, what does it mean to be an ideal team player from Lencioni as well? Being hungry, humble, smart.
Yes.
And like, that's just a basic foundation of being on a leadership team, being able to be humble. We got to push for performance and success, and being humble enough to say, okay, let's look at this and not be defensive, right? Being hungry enough to be like, we want to grow, we want to act, we want to do this, and then being smart from an emotional EQ perspective, how to navigate those situations well.
Yeah, and I think anyone on the leadership team has to be a champion of change. So even if you're more stabilizer in your instincts, like, hey, I got a team, I don't want chaos, I want to keep this, I want to mitigate that chaos, but change is inevitable. So that going back to that W and the GWC on leadership team, they have to know that in order to be better, things are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And there are, change management is a thing, because there are better or worse ways to do it.
Yes.
But you have to be committed to driving change and leading your team through that.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to end on this question. Whose responsibility in an EOS-run company is it to have a healthy and smart leadership team?
I would say on ours, I think it's a visionary's. Well, so the integrator is responsible for the management of, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like visionary has a role for culture, right? Setting the tone, casting a vision, and demonstrating that those core values are being lived out. So I think the leadership team itself, responsibility is the integrator. I lean on Warren to say, like, hey, this is your team. Like, how do you want this to work? But I think there's a healthy tension there between, I would say, the literal organizational structure and the company culture. And to me, it's the visionary and integrator tied together.
I think it's a VI combo, 100%, because the visionary is going to bring the cultural aspect. Are we open? Are we honest? Are we doing those things? They should drive the team charters. They should drive that stuff. The integrator is really from the smart side. Do we have the right systems in place? Are we talking about the right things? So at times, like what this comes up as, a visionary will talk almost a little bit more vague and higher level, and the integrator should be able to bring in the tools of the rock. What we're talking about is a breakdown in this rock. What we're talking about is this. What we're talking about is that. But that's why the alignment of those two is so important in that same page.
Yeah. And I think the visionary's role is to be obsessed with EOS 100%. And the tools, right? So I think that's I want to have clarity on my role and responsibility, which is to lead the organization, to trust Warren, right? To manage and execute. Kind of my head's up, his head's down on and executing. I do think it is the integrator's job to be integrating all the different teams together in the organization.
Yes.
It's a visionary's job to be obsessed with EOS.
Yeah.
So I think that's my obsession, is making sure that I'm using the tools to focus on the business. And then making sure that I can help and equip Warren to run the operations of the organization. But I think I'm obsessed with EOS. He's responsible for the leadership team.
Absolutely. But I do think from a visionary side, don't lose that obsession with EOS is obsession with the highly functioning leadership team, which are both healthy and smart.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think this is what gets me fired up working with teams more than anything else. This is where I spend a lot of time with teams, because this is it's not common. It is not common. There's great companies out there running on EOS and using the tools and all of these things. I meant to say good. There's good companies doing all that. What's holding them back from being great is having a high-performing, open and honest, cohesive leadership team.
Yeah.
That completely is going to change the game for them.
Yeah.
And it's the hard work. But it's really what makes a difference. All
right, so let's close this episode out with you go 3 and I'll go 3 of 3 things. If you're on a leadership team today and you really want to have a greater impact on that team, what are 3 things as a leader sitting on a leadership team that they need to do?
Okay, so I think number 1 would be to read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team together. So read it kind of like a book club, do the exercises as a team, do the exercises. They seem silly at times, but do them, right? The number 2 thing is to constantly remind yourself of team 1, team 2. I'm in servant of the organizational greater good. And number 3, every single time you meet, you ask yourself, what's the one thing I should bring up that's really uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And just be the person that's okay throwing things out there that's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Very good.
So what do you put on the issues list that makes you uncomfortable to bring up?
I think my one would be getting curious. So I think curiosity is really important. And that means that just understanding that if you throw something up and you're like, hey, marketing's not doing well, right? And I'm the marketing seat. That's your story and I have my story. And we don't need to focus on either other's story, right? No, we just need to both get curious and say, okay, now let's dig into that. What does that mean?
Take a walk in the rose garden.
Yeah, exactly. So I think curiosity would be number 1. Number 2 for me is politicking. And really the meaning of politicking is like, hey, it's the second or the third time you are attached to an outcome that you're lobbying for. But it's almost like one and done. Like once you've said that, it's said, right? And so not trying to constantly bring something up when we're already past that.
I love it.
And then I think with that is the one and done. Like once a decision is made, like, be united as a team when you walk out of that room.
Yeah, love it. Yeah. Those 6 principles are pretty good right there. Just take those 6.
Yeah.
Do that over the next 12 months and just watch your team
Yeah.
completely evolve.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew. Great topic.
Absolutely, brother.
All right. See y'all.